Okay. Well, I think I know most everyone, but if I don't know you, I'm Carol Sogard, and I'm currently serving as Kylie Millward's MFA committee chair. And Michael, as well as Marnie and Al Denier, are also have served on our committee or currently serving on our committee. So just to give you a little background about Kylie, in 2013, she graduated from the University of Kansas with a BFA in illustration. She's worked as a freelance illustrator, a public school art teacher, a community-based artist, and also as a firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service. Her work has been featured in local, national, and international exhibitions and has won multiple awards, including both an Award of Merit and Excellence at the Rocky Mountain Printmaking Exhibition, as well as 2 Jurors Awards from the Utah Division of Arts and Museums statewide annual exhibition. Before we start, I want to wish Kylie a big congratulations for this accomplishment today. The last 8 weeks have been a great challenge for all of us, but especially for MFA candidates like Kylie, who have spent 2 years working up to this point, expecting to have a live exhibit, but not being able to. But this moment has revealed your true tenacity as an artist, Kylie, and you are paving the way for the rest of us through this digital exhibition of your work. So congratulations to you. On behalf of her committee, I'd like to thank her for presenting tonight, and I'll send it over to you and let you get started.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lewis, for facilitating, as well as Amy Walkley for promoting this event. I'd like to start off by thanking the University of Utah, the College of Fine Art, and the Department of Art and History for not only providing me with amazing opportunities during graduate school, but for adapting and facilitating learning for students during these difficult times. I'd like to thank the Utah Division of Arts and Museums, the Alice Gallery, specifically Nancy Rivera and her team for continuing to support my work by curating and hosting my virtual MFA exhibition. I'd also like to give a special thanks to my committee, Carol Sogard, Marnie Powers-Torrey, and Michael Hirschon, as well as Al Denier, Ed Bateman, Justin Diggle, and Henry Becker, my family and my husband Noah, for your endless support. There are so many more people I'd like to thank and we'll be thanking in person. Okay, so let's get this started. Let me share my screen. Whoops. All right, sorry about that. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. Okay, so my exhibition is titled Scribbling Outside the Margins. I'm going to begin by reading my artist statement. Circumstances created by gender inequality cultivate the formation of toxic ideas that women grow up with. Often our culture forces women to fit within narrow categories, and this massive pressure to conform can lead to feelings of shame, depression, and even self-destructive behavior. Although I recognize the issues clearly, I personally still continue to struggle with the pressures to remain within the confines of the narrow categories created for me and the harmful rhetoric surrounding my gender. Through the use of humor, educational devices, and accessible media such as colored pencil, animation, and plush toys, my work confronts the unrealistic expectations placed upon women and our ability to overcome. Our society is in dire need of a positive narrative that empowers females to recognize their limitless strength and capacity, which will inherently improve the quality of life for future generations to come. Girls Can't Ride the Giant Wild Boar is a children's book that addresses and confronts these issues. The protagonist, Polly, is a young girl who lives in a society where she is expected to appear and act in a certain manner. She ignores everyone's expectations of her. She believes that she can achieve a goal that is beyond anything anyone has ever accomplished. and she is told it is impossible by everyone she meets along the way, especially for a, quote, silly little girl with crazy dreams in her head. In the end, she not only realizes her dream, but earns an unexpected reward for her staunch defiance of gender norms. I spent most of my life abiding by a strict patriarchal religion. As a female, there were opportunities and rights to which I was denied access. Like Polly, I also had big dreams that I was told were impossible. Unlike Polly, however, I believed what I was told. At the age where I was becoming a woman, I was faced with contradictory messages about what it means to be a woman. The patriarchy was telling me that I would feel an all-encompassing sense of fulfillment through staying at home, rearing children, and serving my husband. Feminists were telling me that I didn't need a family to feel fulfilled, and I could make my own choices. The voices in between the two told me I should do both. Needless to say, becoming a woman is a challenging experience in itself, but being bombarded with mixed messages is overwhelming. In response, my graduate work wrangles the clashing of these ideas. My belief in adhering to a process is like a religion. Each time I try and fail at taking a shortcut, my faith grows. This serves as a replacement for spirituality, though it actually has tangible and calculated steps. There is comfort in the predictability of the process, but there should still be room reserved for unexpected surprises. Sometimes it's okay to break the rules. Some people believe that creativity and brilliant ideas occur out of the blue. It has been my experience and observation that the most genius artists put in the time beyond mere banker's hours. My most substantial work is the result of working long hours and adhering to this process. And the process can be broken down into 10 steps. Number 1, identify a problem. 2, research. 3, brainstorm solutions. 4, create a concept. 5, map a plan. 6, style and method exploration. 7, tweak. 8, aesthetic studies. 9, refine. And 10, execution and final. Although I have other projects that relate to this theme, in order to explain and elaborate on these steps, I will be using my project, Girls Can't Ride the Giant Wild Boar, as a case study. Number 1, identify a problem. The work I was producing at the beginning of my MFA program was aesthetically driven and founded in concept, but lacked a voice and a mature approach. I was drawing tiny kitchen scenes, burning houses, fire, and anonymous female figures. I was poking at a bigger theme, but still didn't quite know what it was that I wanted to say. My committee gave me the advice to really dig deep, and then I would find what I am truly passionate about. Number 2, research. Unbeknownst to me, I was inadvertently doing research during my first year. I was using my upbringing and experiences to inform my work, as well as taking women's studies course, talking to people with similar experiences, and exploring my family history. My genealogy on almost all sides is flushed with polygamy. My great-great-great-grandmother, Emma Ford, was the third among 5 wives. There exist many documents and accounts regarding her husband, and though I have searched, there is very little information about who she was. I have often thought about her and have so many questions for her. Why did she agree to a polygamous marriage? What was it like to share a husband with other women? Did she feel fulfilled? What would she have done if she hadn't joined this marriage? Sorry, there's people like testing out vehicles down my street. I thought the work I was producing had to do with her and her sister wives. However, I realized that the narratives I was creating in place for the lack of information was really about my own personal experiences, and it had to do with my own upbringing in a conservative religion and the internal and external conflicts I dealt with while growing up. And then this is a project done during the printed book class in conjunction with the advanced printmaking course that was exploring these subjects, but a little bit more broadly. Number 3, brainstorm solutions. This step of the creative process concerns the exploration of aesthetic treatments and what mediums best communicate ideas. Frank Shamara once said, "People ignore design that ignores people." To design a user-friendly experience, it's common to practice to prototype an idea and test it on your target audience. This can involve allowing the audience members to explore the work with or without instructions and identify any issues or obstacles that may arise. If the work is not physically interactive, a series of questions could be asked of the audience. When considering what types of mediums best address the problem of gender inequality, specifically during the time when a girl is transitioning into a woman, it became clear who my target audience was. I wanted to depict this moment to adults through the eyes of a child, which is how I came to choose formats such as board games, plushies, and a children's book about a girl. Number 4, create a concept. In my previous work, I was depicting women as mostly powerless victims. It was weighing heavily on my emotions and felt defeating. I decided to make work that not only depicted the issues, but provided an empowering message to prompt action. I had this idea about a girl with a large, seemingly unachievable goal, and began writing during summer break while I was on a fire roll. It was my intent that the main character, Polly, would be indifferent to the notion that others around her were not supportive of her goal. With the help of faculty member Henry Becker, I sent my very rough draft to editor David Barringer. There was a lot of back and forth, but after a semester, he gave it a gold star. There had to be a skill or talent that Polly possessed that would empower her to achieve her goal without assistance from others. Her dream was to be the first person ever to ride a giant wild boar. Everyone told her it was impossible, but she ignored them. She was not interested in the traditional girl stuff and remained unfazed by cultural expectations. Polly had an active and adventurous lifestyle, which often left her dirty and stinky. Everyone she encountered made sure to remind her of her silly dream and the fact that she smelled bad. When she met Wallace, the giant wild boar, he was also dirty and stinky, which often pushed others away. Neither of them were bothered by the other's stench, and they became friends, and Polly achieved her dream. Polly represented a powerful, gender norm-defying badass who wouldn't succumb to societal expectations. The creatures she met along her journey personified the negative messages and hurdles young women are faced with on a daily basis. Wallace, the giant wild boar, is symbolic of the opportunities girls and women are denied based upon their perceived abilities. But even the giant wild boar can be ridden. Number 5, map a plan. At this point, my story had been edited, and now I needed to create the imagery. Because Polly was the most important element in the book, I decided that the way she was drawn would inform the style of the rest of the book. Previous experiences taught me that sketches strengthen over time, so I drew over 100 versions of the character before deciding on one. I wanted her to be different, stylish but different, cute but hearty, small but confident. The thumbnail sketches I had initially developed for the storyboard were good, but all very similar, as you can see. Like the Polly sketches, I made approximately 12 versions of each scene and pulled from each to create a dynamic and interesting storyboard. During critiques, some ideas surfaced about Polly's confidence and large imagination, which altered the way in which I wanted to depict her reacting to the naysayers. Does she actually possess powers, or is it just her imagination? Number 6, style and method exploration. My style is naive. It has been described with such words as cartoony, silly, and kitschy. At first, this was devastating and embarrassing to me. I wanted my work to be taken seriously. However, after attempting to use more sophisticated materials and methods, I quickly realized that I was not being true to my authentic self. I worked with community art outreach programs for 4 years, during which time I developed a love and appreciation for art produced by children, especially those who have not begun to compare their art to the art of their friends. Their art is unfiltered and refreshing. My art practice ultimately combines an appeal to my target audience, children, with a genuine appreciation for their own art-making sensibilities. Using childish mediums such as colored pencil, crayon, marker, and collage creates a childlike aesthetic. Humor also has the ability to evoke youth. Most children's media includes elements of humor. However, it can also serve a deeper purpose. People are drawn to things that make them laugh. Upon closer examination, childlike subject matter addresses more complex societal issues. It's a way to engage with the audience and hold their attention. Essentially, humorous art is accessible art. While making imagery for Girls Can't Ride the Giant Wild Boar, I asked several colleagues and professors for feedback. I received great suggestions, but realized that in doing so, I had completely forgotten my target audience, children. I then asked my friends and family to show samples of my work to their children. They all unanimously decided on an image, which not one of my colleagues had chosen. The children preferred the flatter and more graphic of the two, the one on the bottom, over the slightly more realistic rendering, which I think was also slightly scary. In the end, I scrapped both designs as they did not correlate with the core purpose of my style and methodology, which is to stretch the margin of what art can be. My colleagues and professors all reacted differently to the change, some in favor, others not. I realized that initially I was catering to what would attract publishers, which altered the way in which I created the imagery. During a video conference, illustrator Milton Sahin pointed out that my drawings had become too tight and refined and commented that it seemed like I had lost enjoyment in the creative process. She was right. I revisited my material, color, and technique, which resulted in imagery that I enjoyed making. In conjunction, my audience enjoyed them more than the previous iteration as well. The naive style better depicted the moment between becoming a woman, between being a child and a woman, but through the eyes of a child. Number 7, tweak. This should be done at any point, but I placed it here towards the end as a reminder. It's okay to go back and change things when you're in the middle of it, if it helps the concept. In regards to my children's book, I completely changed this technique and mediums I was using, despite the fact that it was over halfway complete. In order to find the style that best suited the book, I drew one scene over 30 times. Though this multi-step process is helpful to follow, it's important to re-examine the work frequently. And then this is the style that I decided on. Number 8, aesthetic studies. In a formal sense, value and color can inform the concept of a project. For the imagery for Girls Can't Ride the Giant Wild Boar, it was important for Polly not to be overpowered by Wallace and the other creatures she met. Originally, Wallace was made using a black colored pencil, which made him the focal point. Realizing the unintentional hierarchy I had created, I decided to draw Wallace the Giant Wild Boar using a yellow ochre colored pencil as to not overpower Polly, for he is already larger in scale. The color choices I made using the blue, yellow, and black were based on the following concepts. Blue is the color frequently assigned to the male gender. The environmental elements in each scene are blue, representing the patriarchal society. Polly's clothes, Wallace, and the other characters are mostly yellow or slightly green. Yellow is most commonly known as a gender neutral hue, which I assigned to Polly and the other characters because their gender should be irrelevant. The black was really used to unite the two colors and create contrast. The mud is a greenish blend of the two colors, which Polly and Wallace find joy being completely covered in. Polly had already rejected being girly and had overcome that hurdle before the story began. Number 9, refine. I had settled on the colors, dimensions, and media, and I was ready to make any necessary edits. This is an opportunity to refine anything, sketches, color, value. Number 10, execution of final. This method in which I created this book was very hands-on. I used colored pencil and paper. With sketches of each spread and the color studies finalized, I was ready to execute the final imagery. I prepared and trimmed paper and bought additional colored pencils. This is by far the most fun part of the process and when I am happiest. In addition to the spreads, I created the lettering based on the compositions as the imagery was primary and text secondary. Following some edits based on critiques, I sent these to be printed. This multi-step process has guided me in producing conceptual solutions to creative problems. I realized that similar to developing any type of skill, art requires loads of time, hard work, and conviction. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to making art. What works for me may not work for other artists. Creating work that reads clearly in the eyes of one's target audience is a top priority. It seems futile to work so hard on a concept that can't be understood. Discovering my voice was the most important realization during my graduate school experience. Ultimately, the reason I create art is for the betterment of society, and it took me a very long time to distinguish that. For this purpose, my chosen methods communicate these messages of authenticity that are easily accessed. Without such, my message would be lost in the confines and discombobulations associated with high art. I have taken steps to offer positive narratives for females, which our society badly needs. I'm hopeful that my message will improve lives and create change. Okay. So now I'm going to share my book. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna read this. Polly, a little girl, had crazy dreams. Not only did Polly dream that she could get close to a giant wild boar, she dreamed that she could ride one. Most girls Polly's age like ponies and dolphins, but Polly liked to get sweaty, climb trees, and play in the mud. Because Polly hated baths, she smelled stinkier than sardines. Polly's friends and family laughed at her. A stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. That's not true, Polly said. I know I can do this. And Polly set off on a journey in search of a giant wild boar. Polly was told that nobody in the history of the world had ever ridden Wallace, the giant wild boar. Polly knew that Wallace was scary and mean. No one had ever gotten close to him. He had a terrible temper and hooves that shook the forest. In the marsh, Polly met a snake. Plugging its nose, the snake whispered, "What are you doing alone in the forest, sweet pea?" Polly replied, "I am looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first." A stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you're not sneaky enough, hissed the snake. She said, "That's not true. I'm as sneaky as a thief." She stomped past the snake. In the ground, Polly met a badger. Plugging its nose, the badger chirped, "What are you doing alone in the ground, Puddin' Pop?" Polly replied, "I'm looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first." A stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you can't dig fast enough. That's not true, she said. I can dig faster than a mole. She marched past the badger. In the woods, Polly met a bobcat. Plugging its nose, the bobcat yowled, "What are you doing alone in the forest, darlin'?" Polly replied, I am looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first. The bobcat growled, a stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you can't climb very high. She said, that's not true. I can climb higher than the mountains. In the trees, Polly met a hawk. Plugging its nose, the hawk screeched, what are you doing alone in the... the trees, honey muffin. Polly replied, I am looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first. The hawk cackled. A stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you can't fly. That's not true, she said. I can fly as high as the clouds. And she flew past the snake. In the bog, Polly met a toad. Plugging its nose, the toad rattled, what are you doing alone in the bog, Sugar Plum? Polly replied, I am looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first. The toad croaked, a stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you can't jump very far. She said, that's not true. I can jump across the sea. She stomped past the toad. In the meadow, Polly met a moose. Plugging its nose, the moose grunted, what are you doing alone in the meadow, princess? Polly replied, I'm looking for Wallace, the giant wild boar. Nobody has ever ridden him, but I will be the first. The moose snorted, a stinky little girl with silly dreams in her head can't ride a giant wild boar. Besides, you can't run fast enough. That's not true, she said. I can run as fast as the wind. She marched past the moose. In the forest, Polly found Wallace, the giant wild boar, rolling around in the mud. The trees trembled as Wallace roared, I'm taking a bath. Go away. Fearlessly, Polly said, I have been looking for you. I want to be the first person ever to ride a giant wild boar. Well, too bad, Wallace hollered. I stink, and nobody has ever gotten close to me. Unafraid, Polly stepped close to Wallace and asked, why are you not plugging your nose? Don't I stink? You smell like garbage, Wallace snorted. I love garbage. It's my favorite treat. Wallace asked, why are you not plugging your nose? Don't I stink? You smell like mud, replied Polly. It's my favorite thing to play in. The two new stinky friends laughed. Polly asked Wallace, may I please have a ride on your back? Nobody has ever asked, Wallace bellowed. Are you sure I'm not too stinky? Polly replied, of course not. Wallace smiled and snorted, good, hop on. Polly and Wallace spent the rest of the afternoon making mud pies, climbing trees, and rolling around in the mud. Getting very, very stinky. The end. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I did. So I'm going to continue on. This multi-step process can be utilized for all projects, regardless of differences in format. I have applied this process to board game design, handmade books, screen printed narratives, animation, fiber art, etc. All of the following projects fall under the same theme to create positive narratives that empower females to recognize their limitless strength and capacity. So this is no fair. It's after creating my handbound book, The Vanishing Woman Reappeared, I was interested in making an interactive piece that would invite the audience to participate. I wanted to focus on that weird time between being a child and becoming a woman, specifically through the eyes of a school-aged girl. The project evolved from being centered on girls and became more about overcoming life's obstacles in regards to societal norms, bullying, and general unfairness experienced while growing up that are often beyond control. The game involves imperfect characters that get teased and tease others. Ice cream gets knocked out of hands, and kids feel pressure from adults and pressure each other to conform according to societal gender norms. Players can choose to be a variety of things, such as domestic objects, a magical unicorn horn, and a fart. So this is titled Domestic Remiss. This is some of the process for that. The initial idea for this project was to create singular imagery that would all relate to the same theme, but would communicate the idea in various ways. However, the project developed into a series of 4 images with a similar narrative that didn't stop expanding until it got to 24. After hundreds of concept sketches, multiple style and media studies, I decided that I wanted multiple copies that could stand alone to share with people, and screen printing would provide that. The concept became a narrative about a homemaker who began to neglect her chores. Household objects began to pile up and became overwhelming, and her neglect questionably turned into an inventive form of sabotage. This project's called Plushie Period. It's a small collection of the 2 most commonly used menstrual supplies in the form of soft, huggable stuffed toys. Close to half of our population directly experiences a monthly period. Regardless, misunderstandings related to its process and function often lead to an avoidance in discussing the topic. This can hinder learning opportunities and preparedness. Therefore, an unfamiliarity can lead to embarrassment and a lack of sympathy towards those experiencing a period. As one who experienced my first encounter with menstruation without having any prior knowledge, I assumed I was dying. This piece is not only cute and cozy, but serves as an educational device that encourages its audience to interact with menstrual products, including the blood component. The interaction will encourage the participant to develop a strong familiarity towards menstruation through inquiry, curiosity, and discussion. Like the endometrium, the soft comfort of Plushie Period will provide a safe, comfortable environment for dialogue. This active play will prompt open communication regarding periods free of shame, which create a more empathetic attitude towards menstruation. And then here are some animation projects that I didn't spend a lot of time talking about, but also fall under the same theme, and I use the same process and steps to create these. So moving forward, now that I'm done with school for the foreseeable future, the question of what I will do next has been on the forefront of my mind. Honestly, I don't know exactly what I will do long term, but for now I have some plans. I would like to prepare copies of Girls Can't Ride the Giant Wild Boar and send them to publishers in order to distribute my message to a greater audience and get it into the hands of individuals that badly need to feel empowered. My plan for Plushie Period has not reached its fullest potential. Along with manufacturing more plushies, I would like to include an educational element such as a zine or a coloring book to help children understand more about menstruation, as well as some adults. I believe this will eliminate the common misconceptions about periods by simply introducing a cute way of viewing menstrual products. I have realized that art can function as much more than to be viewed, and I will continue utilizing that to try to help people. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen again. Sorry, one moment. Okay, so I'd like to take you to the Utah Division of Arts and Museums webpage. where my virtual exhibition is located. So once you get to this page, you can click online exhibition. And then this is where you can find my work that was curated by Nancy Rivera. So you can either scroll through the bottom and go through all the projects that I covered, or you can go to the left and click those. And then there's also some video work that I briefly went over that is featured on here as well. And I'd like to share one more thing with you. So this is a video that I created with my very cute little 6-year-old cousin, explaining this process, but a more simplified version of it. So hopefully you can hear this okay.
The creative process, explained by a kitten. When there is a problem, a solution is needed to figure it out. This process can be completed. It can be used for all kinds of creative practice. For art, it is used with most perfect exactness. For example, posters, videos, magazines, cartoons, books, children's books about kittens, kittens books about children, kittens books about kittens, kittens books about kittens ruling the world will be understood by lots and lots of humans. If you would like to learn how, you will want to proceed with the following steps. Your success is guaranteed. 1. Identify a problem. 2. Do research. 3. Brainstorm solutions. 4. Choose an idea. 5. Make a plan. 6. Decide on a style. 7. Make color studies. 8. Final edits. 9. Make it. Following the order above seems simple enough, but sometimes you get out of order, which makes it tough. For example, 1. Identify a problem. 2. Do research. 3. Brainstorm solutions. 4. Choose an idea. 6. Decide on a style. 5. Make a plan. 3. Brainstorm solutions. 5. Make a plan. 7. Make color studies. Choose an idea. 6. Decide on a brainstorm solutions. 2. Do research. 5. Make a plan. 8. Final edits. Make it. You end up with extra work that might get blown away. Just know that all of it helped you, which makes it okay. If you worked really, really hard and put in the time, it will get easier and you will make a cool design. The end. Animation by Kylie Millward. Voiced by Peter Gibson. With thanks to Megan Gibson. Thanks.
Okay, so I guess we can open it up to questions. If you want to, or if you have a question, you can click participants down at the bottom. And I think that there's like a hand raising icon that you can use.
Go ahead, Bryce.
All right. Congratulations, Kylie. So one question I've got as a fellow grad student doing research, how did this process change you? So you say that your goal is to make a positive narrative for women and girls. How did this process change attitudes that you had going into grad school?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bryce. So it really it made me rethink everything that I was doing from the beginning. And so like I really had no idea what I was going to do when I started grad school, and I'm sure my committee can attest to that. But this really helped me to realize what it was that I wanted to do. And so I guess if I was to say like that it changed anything, it would just maybe have made me realize what I wanted to make work about.
Kelsey?
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about two things. One, it seems like you show your process at the very same like level of importance that you show your work. It's in your portfolio with the same urgency as other work. So I'm wondering, why is it so important to you to share this method? And also, did this method come directly from your practice, or is it an adaptation of a practice that you studied?
Yeah, so this process is super important to me. I feel really lost when I'm not using it. And so I feel like my work wouldn't be where it is right now without the process. And it is like a process that I've been taught during my undergrad and even in graduate school. It's something that they use in like design and illustration programs quite a bit. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Well, the second part is, why do you disseminate it with the same sort of emphasis that you disseminate your own work? Does that make sense? Like, it's in your portfolio at the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. Like, that's one of the options that I can click as an artwork, right?
Oh yeah, this video, is that the creative process one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was a project that I was like bringing in other themes into. So it's not just the process, but like I guess I'm using the process to as a mode to communicate what it is that my theme is about. And so like I'm using this kitten who kittens are kind of a metaphor for young girls sometimes, and sometimes girls are literally called kittens, and so she finds her power through like finding herself through this process, along with like explaining this process, which like can be helpful for anybody really.
Cool. Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Carol?
Yeah, kind of along the lines of like these characters. I'm just wondering, like, I perceive Wally symbolically from a lot of different perspectives, but I'm wondering how you describe Wally from like a symbolic perspective, like in terms of just who he is.
Yeah. So the giant wild boar is like this thing that nobody has ever ridden. And so I guess symbolically, I wanted to choose something that was maybe larger than life, I guess, or maybe didn't really exist in this realm. And so I wanted him to represent, the obstacles that women have to overcome. And so that's just the basis of, I guess, why I chose a boar, or a giant wild boar.
Do you see him also as an outsider, or representing the system, but yet also kind of breaking the norm of the system and like being supportive as well? Or
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, everybody thought that, he was like this mean, terrible creature. But then Polly showing him that she can break gender norms herself empowers him to do the same. And so I think that, him representing society, but maybe society can also be changed for some basis.
thanks.
Thank you.
Is it okay if I ask a question? Since I'm kind of an outsider.
Yes.
It's funny, I love seeing all the stuff you added after we talked. You added a ton of stuff. And one of the things you added was then this is the children's book, sorry. Everybody believed that the way to ride the boar was a quality that they possessed. In order to do the thing, you have to be sneaky like a snake. In order to do the thing, you have to be like the moose, which I thought was a very clever, selfish way of doing things, because people like that. If you're going to do something, you have to be like me or know what I know. If you've ever met a surgeon, you'll know, or a lawyer, you know what I'm talking about. Where did that come from? Did you do that on purpose? It's almost like she's Ulysses in the Odyssey, and she adopts the different character traits of every archetype in the hero's journey to get to the end. Where did that come from?
It sort of evolved when I was doing the storyboards. She was like accomplishing these things way too easily, and it was a little bit too literal. And so I guess this idea came about when I was thinking about, like, does she have these magical powers, or I don't know, or is she like actually doing these things for real? I guess like her imagination, and then like her physically doing these things became a question that I kind of wanted to explore further. And I guess I don't really have the answer. I'm not sure if it's actually true or not. But I kind of like that mystery.
Yeah, I just thought that was very clever. It's almost if a child read this when they were young and then read it when they were older, they might go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize all this stuff was in there," because it's very subtly put in there. And you had all the very nice repetition. Kids love repetition. They love being able to guess what's going to happen next and then be surprised. So I loved the other thing you did before or after I had seen it was the stretchy legs, and the imagination is expressed in her body over the environment, which I thought was great. It was really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. My mom had a lot of interesting, like your work on women and the household brought back a lot of my childhood with my mom, who went through a divorce and went through all that domestic stuff, like who do I need to be, and the home becomes the enemy. So it was fun to see that it hit home for me as well.
Awesome.
Fun/painful.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Ed?
Hey, great job, Kylie. Do you have a favorite spread in your book of Polly? Is there one that's the most meaningful to you or has special significance to you, and why?
Oh, maybe I should.
I feel like a key moment, or it was like a revelation when you came up with it, or kind of just maybe mean something to you in some way.
Yeah. So let's see. It was a spread with the frog. I can pull it up. Maybe not. So that one was kind of the first time that I realized that she had or I guess that's one, like that question, the one on the top left. The question of whether she actually possessed these powers or if it was just her imagination came into question. It's just her legs are just barely extending and she's kind of looking at this frog like in this very cheeky way, like, yeah, I can do this and you don't believe I can. So yeah, that's just my favorite one. Plus I just like the spread.
Henry?
Yes, congratulations, Kylie. I had a question that I know we never talked about, but I was actually kind of interested when you were reading your story. For you, I noticed that there's a lot of repetition, right? And I'm curious to know like what your thoughts are as far as repetition in the story. Like, is it really important for you to repeat it? And like, how did that come about? The idea to continuously repeat an idea to then just accomplish the idea, if that makes sense, right? Because whenever I'm thinking about writing a story, it's never the same thing over and over and over again. So do you want to talk a little bit about how repetition plays into your work?
Yeah, so that's just something that I picked up on reading kids' books. And then the advice from David Barringer, kids like repetition, they like to repeat things over and over again. But it's also like that constant refusal or denial that you can't do this, Polly. Like she just gets the same thing over and over again, and it's kind of exhausting until something different happens. But yeah, kids like repetition too. So that's another reason.
Yeah, I just find that interesting because I think about all these societal constraints that you talk about, and it's that almost in my head is a very repetitious cycle that we go through, right? Like you're always getting told when you're a kid that, this is the way it has to be. This is the way. No, you can't do that. So I thought that was also really interesting too.
Right, being told no, it gets old. Or it's fun to repeat.
All right, Marnie?
This is a good follow-up to Henry's, I think. First, a comment that I see your process, as Henry was beginning to intonate, really parallels the activity that happens in your book. And I can very much obviously envision you and Polly as being related somehow. And I also see potentially that your experience maturing through grad school kind of parallels this experience that Polly's gone through. And so the repetition of, first of all, there's this multiplicity of voices in grad school, right? Which you took full advantage of. Secondly, there's, in your process, there is this just unbelievable determination to refine. And, earlier on in your career, I know you were getting stuck up in the higher numbers, the lower numbers, apologies. And then I can see that you could potentially get stuck in number 9, refine. But my question to you is, how do you decide when you're finished?
That's a great question, Marnie. I don't know. I guess I just felt like this was the style that I was looking for and something that I found joy in making. So I guess it's like when you find joy in it. But knowing when to stop is the hardest.
So do you think if your deadline was a month from now, I can't believe how much your things have changed since the last time I saw them, which was fairly recently, and it's just unreal. And you're so hardworking and so determined. But do you think? Oftentimes I hear graphic designers and some illustrators talk about that they will work until their time is up. And potentially that's your constraint, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just curious if you think that plays into your process.
I mean, yeah, of course I had to finish this at a certain time. I couldn't just not do it and then not finish my MFA. But yeah, I mean, the deadline definitely plays into it. But it's also like, I still want to take this further. Like there might be a different way of printing it that I've been talking to Henry about.
Well, I think you did an amazing job of refining, but not stiffening. It's really lively and you look like you're having fun again, which is amazing. I'm so glad for you.
Thank you, Marnie.
All right, Katie.
Hi, congratulations, Kylie.
Thanks.
My question is, what influenced or caused you to shift from making artwork about religion and the patriarchy towards making artwork that's targeted towards children?
Oh, that's a great question. So I guess it was getting a little bit too heavy and like wasn't maybe not personal enough when I was making it more about like religion. And then, but the theme of like empowering females is something that I really wanted to make my main focus. But then I thought about like how as a kid, maybe I could have used a little bit more like encouragement. And so I wanted to make work more about that. And I don't really know when that shift was. It might have been when I was exploring like the book arts program. But yeah, I don't really know exactly when that happened or why.
Oh, cool. It's beautiful artwork. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Okay, Maureen. Maureen. We'll come back. Michael.
Hi, Kylie. Congratulations. That was a real wonderful talk to watch.
Hey, Mike. Thank you.
So I wanted to know where in your process is there kind of a contingency plan, or what happens when you get stuck? What's your go-to step in any of the steps?
I guess it'd be like number 7, maybe. You know, the tweak one. I feel like I put it towards the end as a reminder, but it really could be used at any point. Like we should always be revisiting our work and thinking about the bigger picture. But yeah, I mean, like you saw, I got halfway through the book and then I was like, wait, this isn't what I really want. And so, yeah, I guess around that time, but earlier would have been better. I guess always re-examining is good.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you have 6 books to show people, just in case it's someone else's flavor.
A backup.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Maureen, do you have a question? Okay, guess not.
Okay.
Is there any more questions? I think we should all give her a nice round of applause.
Finally.
Hey,
Oh,
good work, Kylie.
way to go.
Thank you. Wow, thank you. Well,
Okay, I am ending it.
thank you all.
Thanks everybody for attending.
Congratulations.
Kylie. Thanks,
Thank you.
Lewis.
Solid work, Kylie.
Thank you.